Okay, so we're gonna start working on putting this parallel 4-link in here. I just got it clamped up there right now, so where the 4-link mount's gonna be, you can see that it's level there. And I got the rear axle level. The pinion angle, you've seen the last video, the pinion angle matches the rear end or the transmission, and also the frame is level on these stands. So we're ready to put this in here, but first what we're going to do is take that out. And they sent 2 passenger sides mounts purchased there. So I'm going to make a crossbar across here anyway, but if the normal guy would have bought this, they would have been screwed. So I got this piece of channel, or a piece of square tube, and I'm going to put that square tube, I'm going to cut those plates off of their mount. And we're going to use this square tube to go from those welded fish plates that I put in frame to frame. So then later, after it's all done, I'll come in and make another drive shaft loop catch here. But right now, I need to get those get all the 4 links. I need to get all the bars set to the same length, and I need to get those plates cut off of that front perch and start setting it up. Alright, so we got our parts laid out here on the weld table, and you can see how they sent me 2 like perches. So there should be, these should be opposite each other. I got 2 one side perches. So what we're going to do is, we're going to cut these welds off. We're going to grind them off and get these plates out. They only welded them on the 2 places, so it should be pretty easy to get them off. We're going to get them off and get these square tubes out, and we're going to run a straight cross member tube all the way across. Alright, so I very carefully cracked the welds off these plates. I got one of them done now. I'll end up doing all of them. And we'll slide it on our new crossbar. It goes in, throw this piece of tube in the scrap pile over here. Alright, so it doesn't quite fit my square tube that I bought. So you can see that I'm just... What I'm doing is, I don't really like you can see where it was laser cut or plasma cut or whatever out. They didn't, so I'm gonna take all these burrs off, everything too, and get these things ready to paint and also weld. Take all that slag off to weld it. The coating that they put on. So yeah, what I'm doing is, I got a finger sander, and I take the finger sander and I just open it up a little bit till it slides on there. Alright, I got them all opened up with the finger sander. You can see that they are able to slide, and that all the bolts still line up. So we got it set up for this piece of tube now, and now we're going to clean those plates up from where they didn't do it. Alright, I'm going to use a countersink and come in here and take these slag burns off from the plate. Now I'm going to do that all the plates, all both sides. Alright, I got all the holes deburred now on all sets of plates. So now I'm going to come in here and use my belt sander and bevel the edges, and then take this mill scale off on all the plates. And then we'll be ready to start fabbing this thing up. Alright, all the plates have been ground, deburred, and beveled all the way around. So now we're ready to start setting it up. We need to make sure all these are the same length. So what we're going to do is just bolt. I need to run them out to where there's 5/8 of an inch on each side, so that we have adjustment in and out. And plenty of stick in inside with the rod end. So we're going to set one up with 5/8 out, and then we're going to put bolts in and make sure they're all exactly the same length or close enough to each other that they're the same length, using the bolts that come in the kit. So so I'm going through with the dial indicators. I'm setting everything at 12 millimeter. So, and then I'm marking them left and right because I'd like to orientate them all in there the same way. And then I'm putting the bolt through to make sure they're the same length. So they're all going to be orientated left and right, Heims in there, and which it really doesn't matter, but I'm going to have them all the same, and I'm setting my length on my bars by, setting them all 12 millimeter. Now by 12 millimeter, what that gives me is a full nut. So if I decide that I need to go out, there's an extra 12 millimeter inside here. And there's 12 millimeter, so I got it in the middle on each side. So I got 12 millimeter that I can, actually, a whole inch that I can go in, and a whole inch that I can go out. Basically 20. It's not 25.4, but it's 12 millimeters. There's 24 millimeters. I can go in and go out if I need to adjust the length on the rear end. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm using the bolt for the kit. I'm marking the orientation of the rod ends, and I'm setting the length. This fifth one is an extra for a panhard bar. We're not going to use it. So we're going to get these 4 set up, and we probably just go ahead and set this one up while we're here, but we're going to get these 4 set up, and then we'll be able to start putting use this table to start building the actual link setup for the rear end. Alright, so with the bolt in the rod end, I'm with it flat on the table, bolting both sides. I'm jamming the jam nuts in the center position. So I'm using the bolt and the table to make sure that these are all, in line with each other. So I'm going to go through there and I'm going to set them all that way. And now all the jam nuts are set before I get started. Alright, I get all the jam nuts set. You can see they're the same length because the 5/8 all thread goes right through the links. It slides in there nice and easy. So now that we know that our links are all the same length, and we know they're all parallel with each other, locked this way, and we know they're left, and we know they're right, we're ready to start building it on this table. So we're going to build it on this table, and we're going to jam nut it crossways with the all thread. And we'll have this thing completely square here on the table before we install it in the truck. Alright, so I've measured inside the frame, and I'm going to go and I mark this out. I'm going to cut this cross tube. Later I'm going to come in and make the drive shaft loop for it, but for now I want to keep this as straight as I can. I don't want to butcher it or cut it open yet at all. Later I'll weld tack a brace in and cut the center out, and then we'll make a center bar for it, but I want to keep this straight. The drive shaft loop we'll put in later. So I'm going to cut this now to go inside the frame rails, and we're going to test fit it. Alright, so I've started laying out, and my distance, I want to go as wide as I can, but I want this bolt to be able to not hit the frame and not have to be cut. So I got my side to side distance in between the frame is all set off of this bolt. So better get this nut off here. You can see that it'll go all the way through, and you'll be able to get your hand in there and work on it and everything. So what I've done is I've spaced the crossbar up the 3 3/4 the plate is. And I've made that crossbar. I've taken these angles so I know that I'm square with my table. So they're clamped on. And they go down here and come flush with this edge. Then I've clamped my bar down. Then I've got spacers. And this plate runs down to this edge of the table. So I know that that plate is square with the edge of the table. And then I have an angle put down in here. They clamp this way, and then I can clamp that plate that goes up. I've done that on both sides. There's an angle clamped both ways. It's spacered from the edge of the table. And then what that allows me to do, I also have these pieces of steel that are going to be my exact, I'm going to be able to put them in there. They're the exact width of my bearings. But what this allows me to do is to come in here and check that these plates are square with the table. So I can come in here and make sure that these plates are square. And then I can measure distance side to side, and also the end distance on each side on that crossbar. The center of this crossbar is going to end up being cut out and a drive shaft loop put in it, but that'll be after it's installed in the car. So now what I'm going to do is I got 5/8 all thread. It cost me $60 for the nuts and all the all thread. I got 6-foot sections of all thread. I'm going to cut them at 31 inches and run them through here. And these plates will be square with the table this way. And then the all thread is going to allow me to space everything off perfect from each other and hold it. So I'm going to get the all thread cut. Alright, I got the all thread through here. You can see more how I use this angle to make this outside plate square. And I use the outside edge of the table and spacer everything in all the same. Now I can go down the edge of the table and measure. I can take a straight edge and or a square and make sure these are up square with the table all the way around, and I can measure bracket to bracket to make sure everything's spaced the same. And then I can even cross measure plates. But right now what I'm doing is I've cut these, I got these to space these out so they can't warp. So I've cut these blocks before I start welding, and that'll space those so they can't warp. So I got one, if you notice over here, I got one clamped on the bottom, one clamped on the top. And they'll be welded in to keep these, just a little bit more support to keep these brackets in shape when I go welding them. Plus it'll give me a weld up here and down there, so it'll stagger welds in here, make these harder to deflect. So I'm going to go ahead and clamp this one in on this side. And then I have more of the steel. When we actually put it up in the truck, we'll put the brackets in there and clamp them before that gets tacked to the rear end. And we'll have that spacing correct over there. I may put one little small piece in right here to hold it, but it may not, it will not need it probably, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put bracket straps that come down like this around the back of the rear end housing. So alright, we're getting closer. You can see how we're squaring everything up. Like I said, later, this is easier for me to mock it up here like this with it being straight. Later, once I get this all welded in the truck, we'll brace it, and I'll cut the center out for the drive shaft loop on this front cross member. But that'll be easy. All this all thread will be waste, so we're going to tack the nuts in. We're going to weld crossbars across, because that pinion comes out like this, so the center section of these two bars got to be gone anyway to be able to go in where the rear end is. So we'll weld an X bar in here and we'll cut that center part out. And maybe some upper bars. We're going to make this all stiff one piece, and we're going to pick it up, put it in there, and have this as square as possible with the frame and the rear end when it goes in the truck. And then we'll come in with a grinder and just whack all these bars out. They're all waste. They're just used for mock-up. So you can see with my spacers in here that link can actually move up and down, which is important. There will be paint and maybe some warpage, but we don't want this stupid tight. That bracket will be able to pull in tight later. Right now we just want it to where it's going to be floating in there. So we got these pieces in, and that can always pull down up against the sleeve. We'll be good to go. There is some play inside these bushings for that bolt that goes in there, so this is not all stupid critical, but we're trying to get it as close to perfect as we can before we put it up in the truck. Alright, so the center part of these bars, the rear end housing is going to be right here. So what we got to do is take these scrap tubes and come in here and weld between the all thread. We're going to build a box where it comes out in front of the rear end housing, and then we're going to cut these pieces of the all thread out. Once we have everything stabilized, we'll be able to pick this thing up all in one unit and square and put it up in the truck. Alright, I've taken my finger sander and I've come in here and I've cleaned up everywhere that's going to weld. And I also beveled my spacers, so there's a sharp point in there on those plates. So that's going to keep those plates from deflecting so much. And it being rounded here, there won't be like a crack, as much a crack point in or here. But we're going to get all these done, and it'll be welded like this all the way around. Alright, so I made two spacers. I've rounded off. And I'm going to clamp them in here in the center of the arch for the rear axle. This will allow me to keep my distance when I go to weld them on, and also I can take a clamp and clamp straight from that bar to the rear axle to hold this all the way up against it. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in, and they'll be ready when I go to tack and weld all this up. Alright, I got the center support. This is just scrap metal. And why we need to do this is because these two center bars got to come out, and that rear end housing is going to be there. So we wanted these eyelets straight in line with each other. We use the table to do that. So now that we've got everything braced up, we'll cut this out, and we'll be able to take this whole thing as as perfect as we could get it, and put it up inside the truck and weld these mounts on, so we know these links are straight for each other inside the frame and on the rear end. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these pieces out now. Alright, I got the spacer piece welded on the top and the inside. And I've come around and tacked everything. I checked my distance measurement out, and then I also cross measured the brackets. So see, this is 37. 37. So it's square out, and then I've measured it top and bottom. See, 28 and a 16th over a quarter there. 28 and a 16th over a quarter. So I've done that top and bottom. I've checked square top and bottom. 16th over 3/4, 28. So I've done all that, and then take the square in here, and I check my brackets are square with the table. So All my brackets are square with the table. I've checked every bracket, so it's ready. You know, it's as square as I'm going to get it. You know, it's within 30-second. So what we're going to do is go in now and weld everything we can weld, and then flip it over, and then the all thread, you know, it went all the way through before I cut it out, but we still have the opportunity that if it moves when I you know, for some reason it toes in or out, which it shouldn't, we still have the opportunity to move this stuff to get it back square. So we're going to weld it all now, and then we're going to come back here and check all this. And like I said before, my distances so I can get this stuff apart. So, you know, I wanted to be as wide as I could and then still be able to weld everything together. So we're going to weld that up and then flip it over and weld it, and then we'll put it back on the blocks that I got. So I've made a stand-up height that was exactly the same height as these plates off. So, and that's another thing I didn't show you, is I've checked it square this way too. So we want these bars level. So this would be basically, we're setting it up for ride height. When I put it inside the truck, it's going to be level. So you see that plate, both ends are square. And then the other side's that way too. So all these plates are square to the table. And I got all the lefts and all the rights together. So we're gonna weld it up now, and then go prepare the truck for the, you know, the put it up in there and weld it in the truck. All right, I got the whole thing flipped over and welded it on the bottom. Now, if you're gonna weld it with these bushings in, you're gonna have to take time to weld it. Make sure you don't melt these things. You may want to cool it with water and a rag if it gets too hot. But, you know, take your sweet ass time and make some pretty welds. Alright. So it's cool all the way down, and it's perfectly square. 37 at the bottom. 37 at the top. So hard to do this with one hand most of the time. So come on, gotta go to the right plate. .37 at the top. 37 at the bottom. And then all our distances are good. Like this. Nothing changed. So there it is. She's ready to go in the truck. Of course, this is cut out to go around the rear end housing. And she's ready to, I gotta go clean up the rear end now, but this is all ready to go. These are square with each other, and the center of that cross member will be cut out later after it's all welded in, and another drive shaft loop will go in there. So anyway, have a nice day. Alright, I've thrown that up in there. It's just sitting on a jack. I use the jack to run it up to where it's level, and I'll check the both bars to be level. Now across the frame here, the frame's level at this point, and the rear axle is level. So I've got the frame level, I got the axle level. It's suspended in the air to work on it, but it's at ride height. So I want these bars level at ride height. So right now it's ready to weld in, but I got to take it back out, clean that axle, grind that axle up so it'll actually stick to it real well. So it went in there real easy. It's going to come out real easy. You can see how I put that. So this internal part is all going to get whacked out. All that all thread is waste. All this pipe in the inside. However it takes me to cut it out with a grinder and just get it out of the way. and put the, the actual link bolts back in, that's what's going to happen. But this is all going to hold it in place so that everything's parallel and everything's exactly the same length. And I used that table, that flat table, to know all that. Alright, if you like this kind of stuff, check back in. Have a nice day.